Hi, I'm Reggie Turner, and I'm here with Jim Miller, and the FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. We are approaching election season, Jim.
Gotta love it.
And we're going to jump into it tonight. Terrence is off tonight, a respite for him. He's been running around quite a bit. So we'll start to tackle these issues ourselves. But the deadline has passed, so all the candidates are in regards to local, statewide, and also national elections. So let's jump into it, shall we?
We shall.
Well, first and foremost, just looking at City Council, 4 of 5 incumbents are running for office, with Shelley McIntyre choosing not to run. 7 new candidates for that position. What say you, Jim?
So I guess I'm never surprised that Christian Alshire is running again.
Right.
I was frankly a little surprised that Tiara Burnett, because all indications from what I heard was that she wasn't going to run this time. I find her a very intelligent, articulate young woman, so I'm not necessarily upset that she's running, but I was just surprised. Peter Perini, no surprise there. Matt Schindler, I guess this will be his first official election because he was appointed, right?
This will be his first opportunity. Well, this will be his second opportunity to win an election. He ran in the previous cycle
And lost.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Peter Perini, no surprise. I'll be very truthful with you, and granted, I don't live in the city of Hagerstown, but I'm surprised, frankly. I've not heard much from the newcomers at this point. Now, we're still early in the process.
We're still early.
I get that, but yeah, kind of surprised there.
In regards to this list, I'm not surprised. When you talk about Tiara Burnett, her activity picked up the closer we got to the deadline. That gave indications that she was running. You know, she took on the fight or the concern that was around the county's, I don't know, diversity and inclusion committee that she had expressed some concerns about, that she had served on in that city capacity. So she is looking for another shot at it. A lot of her campaign stuff is saying she wanted to take her 4 years of learning and she wanted to be able to apply it this second time around. So we shall see.
Well, again, my opinion, obviously, but I found her, I thought she was an intelligent voice on the council, the things that I heard from her.
You know, my struggle with the council as it was previously constructed or currently constructed is, if you watch city council meetings, there was not a lot of input on major issues. It was dominated by the voice of Alshire. Obviously, he has the most experience, but it was dominated by his voice. And that didn't change over 4 years. It was still dominated by his voice. I would say the one thing that has changed is that with Peter Perini, there's a little bit more experience there. So with his voice, it wasn't just dominated by one person. You know, the other thing that I saw in part of this term before Brucci stepped down, there seemed to be a disinterest from him. It seemed like he had checked out.
From?
Just the participation. Like, there wasn't a lot of there.
From Brucci?
From Brucci.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, obviously Brucci had the experience, but there was a lot of things that he just chose not to communicate on and leave there. So the debates or the discussions were not as robust. And I think if you watch city council meetings now, obviously Mayor Martinez is running for Congress and is very much in that mode. And it seems to me like Peter Perini is serving as the de facto mayor along with Scott Nicewarner.
Yeah.
Because if you watch city council meetings and you talk about who's going to MML meetings and different things of kind of making sure you have an overview of things that can affect the city, it is Peter Perini that's doing those things at this point.
You know, and I have to say this, right? And Peter can be a polarizing figure in some circles. But you can never, one thing you can never say about Peter Perini is that he doesn't put in the time.
Right.
I mean, the man lives this stuff from the time he gets up in the morning till the time he goes to bed at night. And that's a good thing, right?
Well, it is a good thing. And for him, he has not won an election successfully,
Right,
but he had a head start of actually being in the seat,
right.
being a sound mind in the room. So that gives him a head start.
But if you remember, there were a couple in that position last term that didn't make it, right?
Let me think about that. Heffernan.
Right.
Heffernan didn't make it, but Heffernan also didn't campaign either.
Okay.
I mean, it was kind of, he threw his name in the hat and it was just like, I was here. I mean, there's only two people that can get away with that in recent history, right? That's been Alshire and Brucci,
Yeah.
right? By name recognition, their reputation in the community, they've been able to just say, I'm running again, and there's no campaigning, there's really no raising money, maybe a yard sign or two from Brucci, but Alshire doesn't do that. And, that's where we are. But, Alshire slipped in popularity this time around as well. And then you saw, I believe Tierra Burnett was like one of the top vote getters. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. But, let's look at this list in regards to new candidates. And many of these I have not heard of before. So you have Caroline Anderson that is running. What's interesting, it looks like she's giving a business address as her, and that doesn't say anything, but I'm just not familiar with Caroline Anderson. Erica Bell is running. Mark Bell. I don't believe there's a relation there between those two. Sean Flaherty. Sean Flaherty was one of the final candidates when Schindler was picked, so he's had an opportunity to be in front of that body before. Journey Martinez is running. She's the daughter of the now mayor, Takesha, that's running. Stacy Michael, I believe Stacy serves on the city's ethics commission, but she's been involved and around city government for a while. She was also one of the finalists when Schindler was picked, so there's some
Right.
familiarity there. She's running. Obviously, we said Peter Perini and Schindler. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out.
And Rich Owens. Did you say Rich Owens?
I did not say Rich Owens. No, I missed. I'm sorry about that, Rich. Yeah, I did miss Rich Owens in regards to that. So altogether, we have 11 candidates. I believe 10 of them make it through from the primary to the general. So only one of these names will not make it through. My guess is that's going to be one of the names that we don't know that may not have the resources or the wherewithal to campaign. So the majority of these candidates we'll see on the general election ballot in regards to City Hall. But we know that at minimum there's going to be at least one new council person
For sure.
in regards to that body. And, the big thing is there's all the contention between the city and the county. We didn't really see a reset in regards to that relationship over the past 4 years, but this offers another opportunity for the next 2 years because they have some major issues ahead of them that they need to make some headway on. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see some of these campaign. Now, the only one that I've really seen campaigning, and that just might be just from my purview, it has been Flaherty. I know that I believe him and and we're going to go into the mayor's next race, but him and one of the mayoral candidates had a meet and greet or something like that. And I know that he does have a Facebook page up and has been posting regularly and following some community things in regards to that. Also, Stacey Michaels does have a page up.
She does.
I don't believe she's been as active as the others, but she does have some familiarity there, and I'm sure they all are going to be ramping up because we're in a less than 100-day race to the primaries. Are there any others that you see that have social media pages?
Well, Mark Bell has a social media page, it appears.
Okay.
Tiara has one,
Right.
obviously.
And I wasn't talking about the incumbents. Like I know Schindler.
Yeah, it looks like Sean Flaherty has one.
Yep.
It looks like Ms. Martinez does not. Ms. Michael does.
Yes.
Mr. Owens does. He has it. Look, I don't know whether this is his personal page or an election page, but there's definitely a page out there that's referenced.
Gotcha.
Mr. Perini does not.
I think Peter may have an old page out there. He probably just hasn't really become active on
Right.
that in regards to campaign mode because, I mean, this is not his first cycle of running. So
Or his second or his third or his fourth.
right. So he has a page out there. I just don't believe that he's active in that page as of yet. So, but it'll be interesting to see, how they pick up going forward. And what I'm interested to see is the Southern newcomers. I'm interested to see what their message is to say that they deserve a seat as opposed to those that are running for the seat again. Like I said, the page that I've seen most often is Flaherty, and I've seen a lot of him talking about safe communities and crime and kind of digging in on those issues. So it'll be interesting to see if that message resonates
Yeah.
and gets through. But I'm interested to see some of these other candidates in regards to what they hope on. Stacey Michaels, she's community minded, serves on nonprofits, so you'll see her activity and her sharing around the nonprofit community in regards to being an advocate for those type of things. And I'm interested to dig into these other candidates and see like what they're running on and how things will move forward for them.
How important is it in your mind that people have that experience on the not-for-profit side as they run for office, that they've done the volunteering, they have been active? Is that a way that people, personally, I like that because I feel like that's a way for people to learn what's going on in the community.
Yes, I think it's important. And I also, now I'm not a city resident, so I don't have a vote in this, but from the seat that we sit in and we're looking at it, I give a lot of credit to those candidates that have went through Leadership Washington County. Mm-hmm. Because from that standpoint, you have seen every aspect of this community. You've heard from leaders in every aspect, and you have a broader understanding. And not only that, through the relationships that you've developed, even if there are things that you're not well versed on, once you've went through that program and you've become an alumni, you've made these relationships, you're in a situation where you can pick up the phone and get understanding. And I think that's one of the things that I was disappointed with this current council on, because it seems like 4 years is a long time to say it took me 4 years to learn this job, give it to me again. I just think that I think there needs to be a faster learning curve when you're sitting in that seat, especially when it is your responsibility in regards to overseeing some of the outcomes for the citizenry, especially in the community that's struggling. And I understand that it's a part-time position. It's not a well-paid position.
No.
But it is a position that you signed up for.
Yes, it is.
So to say that, it takes you 4 years to kind of learn the ropes, I'm just like, well, what prevented that learning curve in regards to that? So I'm interested to see the different issues. But to your point, yes, I think especially in our community, we have so many nonprofits.
Yes, we do.
I think having a lay of the land of the nonprofit community is hugely important. But just as important is having a lay of the land of the business community. Because, we are looking at this large amount of investments. And the number that I'm seeing touted is somewhere between 1 and 1.8 billion of development that's being done. And, the funny thing is I'm seeing it in Mayor Martinez's campaign. She's claiming that she oversees this 1.8 billion dollars in development. I think that can be challenged quite a bit. But to that point, though, with $1 billion in development, then I believe your candidates are really going to need to have an understanding of the business community, this development. and not only the opportunities but the challenges, because the challenges are where the landmines are.
Yes, they are, for sure.
Yeah. But it's going to be an interesting race. I have talked to some folks in politics, and there's a number of people that are not in this race that people around the community wish were in the race. And when it comes to an experience and acumen standpoint, some people are very disappointed in this list. And that's not pointing the finger at any particular candidate, but some of the folks that I've spoke to here and around Annapolis feel like the position has been a little bit devalued because some of the antics that you've seen out of that body.
Yeah.
If you think about early in this administration, it became this show of, I don't know, women's power or solidarity, but it had nothing to do with governing and the needs of the people. It was all about, I'm here, look at me. And that continued for quite a while, and it turned off quite a few people. And I know that there are women in our community, some of the best and brightest, that were insulted by those actions. And so when you look at this list and you see that, there's a lot of respected, business and nonprofit people in this community, and we could probably sit here and come up with a list of 50, and none of them are on this list.
Right. What about mayor?
Well, on the mayor standpoint, we're going to have a new mayor. So we know this. We're going to have a new mayor, right?
Yes.
And the two candidates are Bill McIntyre and Stephen Schuette.
Right.
And just kind of looking at things from afar, Bill McIntyre and Sean Flaherty seem to be aligned. I think they had a joint meet and greet or something of that nature, so it seems like they're aligned in their stance. Stephen Schuette, since he announced, I haven't seen anything. I'm not sure if he has a page. I see he has an email address. Oh, okay, he does have a Facebook page, Mayor Stephen Schuette.
Yes, he does. Yes.
I'll have to do some digging. I haven't seen his page, so I'm not absolutely sure what he is running on.
Well, again, it's early. I will say that Mr. Schuette has been reasonably involved in the community.
Right. I know that I know with the Chamber Awards, he won Young Professional a year or two ago, and I now think he's up this year for Business Person of the Year.
Yep.
So obviously he's known. He's known within the business community from that standpoint. It's going to be interesting two-man race, and I just think that this offers a new opportunity for the city, right, to kind of turn the page on some of the things that we've seen before. So it's going to be interesting to see the race between these two.
Yeah, I would say, interestingly, and I've met Bill McIntyre once.
Right.
I don't remember him being extraordinarily remarkable, but I remember him being cordial. And I'll be interested to hear what both of these men have to say relative to their vision for the city of Hagerstown.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that piece.
Because at some point, you've got to get beyond the, Mayor Martinez, with all due respect, I think has been about the peace and love and kumbaya and all of this. Yeah, we've got some real challenges, and we need real leaders to deal with them.
Yeah. The one interesting thing about Bill and Stephen, I believe both of them are graduates of Leadership Washington County. So speaking to that leadership, obviously they have
so that's your litmus test.
It's not my litmus test, but it is one of in this community, I just think that is an important avenue. To have that experience, to have an understanding. Because in that program, you get to see every aspect of this community. So if you aren't for some of these unknown candidates that aren't super active in the nonprofit community, the business community, like where are you getting your information from? What are you running on? How well do you know your constituents? How well do you know the issues? Are you just singly looking at some small things that are of interest to you, Or have you really looked at the community as a whole and said, this is the value that I can bring to these standing issues that are on the table?
Now, obviously, Bill was once married to our current councilwoman, Shelley.
Yes, yes.
So, I don't know if there's name recognition benefit he'll get there. I'm a purist. I like to think that we don't elect people on name recognition, but I know that's probably not accurate. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what he has to say. He seems, when I met him, he was reasonably quiet.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing for me is kind of the inside baseball. With Bill and Stephen running, Stephen Schuette running, where are these little political allegiances we have in the city, where they're going to go? And the real conversations happen, in the Herald Mail comments and different things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how people are lining up and taking shots at this person and that person and their perceptions. Because again, in the city of Hagerstown, it's not a large portion of the electorate that votes.
No, it's not. And in the general, 15, 16%?
Yeah, and the primary is even less, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to just be interesting to kind of see those type of things and how they're able to navigate things. And I understand that it's a nonpartisan race, but partisans try to make it partisan, right? I know the Republican Central Committee will come out and say,
they absolutely will.
These are the Republicans that are running, and this is who you should vote for. And they've already identified Bill as one of those.
Yeah.
And, I don't know much in regards to Stephen's political affiliation, but so is
I don't either.
Is he the Democrat in the race?
I don't know.
Is he an independent? Is he, neutral?
Yeah, and again, I'm not in the bag for Stephen Schuette at this point, but I would tell you, coming out of the gate, if I had to pick today, it would probably be Stephen, only because I know a lot more about him.
Yeah.
And I believe he is an honest broker, and I believe he truly cares about this community.
Yeah. Well, Bill was the husband of a politician, so he was in the background before.
Okay.
So this is his opportunity to kind of step out front and talk about his vision. But that's all a part of what makes it.
And this may be the
exciting.
year for that, right? Don't we expect that around May, Michelle Obama is going to announce that she's going to replace Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate?
That rumor has been on the table for a couple of years. But
and rumor has it that it was reported on by the New York Post here just this week.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it either, but that was.
But when it's official, we will make sure that we have Michelle Obama on to announce it here first.
Sure.
No, but it's gonna be a good race, and it's gonna shake up things in that building.
It is, and that building needs shaking up.
It does need shaking up because
not only with the elected officials.
No, with the staff, because there's many in the staff that take on the attitude of the politicians, with the public, with nonprofits, and there's no reason to do that. Like, I am directly involved with nonprofits that have received animus from the staff of the city for no reason at all.
Well, and I don't see the politicians being as involved. We had the big thing at the Maryland Theater with the film. How many of the Hagerstown City Council people or mayor were there?
No, they weren't going to be there, and no one really expected them to be there.
Because it's not like that property's in Hagerstown. Oh, wait.
Well, I mean, the whole Jonathan Street.
Why
cabin
wouldn't they
thing.
be there? I don't want to get off on a tangent, but seriously, why wouldn't they be there?
Well,
why wouldn't they be more involved in the Boys and Girls Club?
Well,
why wouldn't they be more involved in?
But they are involved with the Boys and Girls Club because they showed up for the ribbon cutting of the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, that's great.
The ribbon cutting.
Yeah, well,
right,
right, of course.
Right.
We how many people do we know like that?
A lot.
That like to take credit once the job is done. That's not. The ribbon cutting is not the hard part, right?
No,
Can we agree on that?
That's very much so. I think
I could get fired up on that topic because they have been largely absent in my view.
Yeah. I think the thing that's going to be broken by a new mayor and some new blood on council is the group think. Like this current group feels as though if you challenge them, then you are an enemy.
Right.
And then anything that you're attached to, that entity is an entity too. And it's like, does that serve the citizens well?
Right.
You know, I remember, so for instance, just talking about the cabin as a microcosm. I went in front of city council in May of 2019. And I was talking about these issues in regards to Jonathan Street and the historic preservation and being left behind. And I was met with such an animus going there because, number one, it was like, well, who are you, Reggie? And why are you doing this? You must be doing this because you're trying to run for office. And I just remember going to that meeting. I took with me the executive director of the Banneker Douglas Museum and the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, and one of my commissioners. And the reason that I took them is because I just wanted them to see how people were treated that just challenged what they were doing. And I even remember saying to Lou Metzner at the time, I said, Lou, if you think I'm here grandstanding, and if what I'm saying about historic preservation in this community is wrong, you can wipe your hands at me. You can say, you know what, this failure was Reggie's, this was him grandstanding, you can be done with me. But I said, if you're right though, just think about the benefit that can be done for the community. And since then, there's been this animus in that building. And the thing is that now this cabin, the documentary is a national story, and the city is not even on board with it. And they've missed really an opportunity that can be a further piece of economic development. However, it's an opportunity, though, for some of these candidates to kind of pick up the ball. Just thinking about this weekend in regards to kind of who was there, Bill McIntyre made it. So he was there. He got an opportunity to see the documentary. He got an opportunity to hear from some citizens in regards to what their concerns were and what they saw. So it'll be interesting if some of these candidates pick that up and kind of make that as a part of their platform. But Jim, we have some other races to cover locally, and then we can span on out. But how about if we take a quick break?
Let's take a break.
All right. Stay with us. We'll have more early on election coverage after the break. Welcome back to the show. We're jumping back in with more early season election coverage before the primaries. Next up, we have Board of Elections.
Board of Ed?
Oh, Board of Ed. We've talked so much about Board of Elections and all their controversies. I went right there. But no, we mean Board of Education, where 4 out of the 7 seats are up. All 4 of the incumbents are running for this. And then there is 7 new for this race as well. And looking at the list, we have Victoria Beachley that's running. She ran for county commissioners last go around.
She did.
Unsuccessfully. Peter Bigford, who is an incumbent, is running again. Charles Burkett, that
Ran for county commissioner?
was appointed to county commissioner, but didn't win.
But he ran
seat.
again, yeah.
And then now, so he's running for this. Nancy Lee Evans looks like a newcomer. Michael Kiefer. Who else we have here?
Ethan Lowen.
Ethan Lowen, who ran last 2 years ago.
Ashley McCusker.
Ashley McCusker is running. Robbins Merchant Spickler is running. Melissa Williams.
Stan Stauffer.
Yes, Stan Stauffer and Melissa Williams are both incumbents.
Correct.
That are running. And then we have April Zetmeyer running. And it looks like Sean Flaherty had initially filed to run for that seat and then changed his mind and says, no, I want to run for council. And then also Anthony Williams of Beacon House.
Formerly
of Beacon House. Since that shut his doors, I had filed, but then he took his name out of the hat for that as well. So I think it's going to be hard to beat the incumbents.
Oh, I think it's going to be impossible.
Yeah. I think it's going to be hard to beat the incumbents.
What has been the bad news out of our school system lately?
Obviously our school system, like many around the country, has its issues.
Right. Tell me a time in history when there's not been something we could improve upon.
Right, right. Well, it's just that we went through a period of time where, banning books and curriculum and all of that has been sweeping the country in regards to that. But since our Board of Ed has been more conservative, they really haven't been under
No,
attack.
they haven't. And they've not committed any egregious errors.
Right.
And they have, shown improvement. While there are still areas to show improvement, they have shown improvement. I am very high on this current Board of Education.
And the hiring process of the superintendent has went well,
Has
and
went-
I have
has
not
gone well,
heard
yes.
anything negative there. So
No.
Again, another race that
And I think the only people that might be upset are those that are impacted by some of these potential consolidations.
yes,
And that's expected.
but most of those have been slowed down.
Well, they
as
have.
well. Yeah.
They have. But the other thing we have to understand is we put these people in these positions to make those tough decisions.
Yes.
And I would argue that if they're not making them, that's much more a dereliction of duties than it is to make them, even though they may not always be agreed with.
Yes. And again, there's some important things going on there with budgets being cut and things of that nature. So, but I'm looking at this list, and I don't see anybody on this list that I would say is vulnerable.
No, I don't think they are.
But I guess it's going to be interesting to see the type of campaign that
Well,
those
and
that
that's
put
the
their name
key.
forward.
That's the key, because they'll find areas where they think they can improve.
Right.
Will that story resonate with the voters? I don't know.
No, but I think about last election cycle, and from your experience, I think we would agree that Michael Gessler was probably the most polarizing.
Yes.
Of those six. He didn't have any issues getting through.
No, he didn't.
Right. So if you look at this group, there's no one.
Well, I don't
that's
think
made
there's
any
anyone
noise.
really polarizing on this group.
Right. So that's why I say that 4 is going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah. Well, we're in agreement. So that means when it comes to bet season, we might have to take that race off the table. I don't see anything for me to win there.
I lost enough dinners last time.
Next race, Jim, we have Congressional District 6. Obviously, David Trone held that seat. He's not running. He's running for Senate. There's 25 new candidates, including Mayor Takesha Martinez. Locally, Dr. Brenda Cham is running. And then also perennial contender Neil Parrott jumped in the race at the last minute. What say you about this race? CD6.
Yeah,
as we like to call it.
Yeah. So, well, what do I have to say about this race? I think that Mrs. Trone is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Mrs. Trone?
I'm sorry. No,
Let me guess, you were saying Mrs. Delaney.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Thank you. I think Mrs. Delaney is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think that she's got name recognition. I think she's got money. I haven't heard much from her. She was there on Sunday, wasn't she?
Yes, she actually came in town on Sunday. She came to the screening of the house on Jonathan Street, and then she was back Monday because there was a forum. The Democratic Central Committee held a forum at Applause Catering, and 10 of the candidates showed up there. Also, Destiny West, another not well-known name that's in the race, she was also there as well. She got her start around politics. She worked for Senator Joanne Benson, that many of this community would know. But you know what, Jim, looking at that race, there's really only 4 people that are viable candidates at this point.
And who
on
are
the
they in your...
Democratic side. So, and I'm just going to go in order of how I'm reading them. It will be Jeffrey Grammer. I believe he's either a psychologist or psychiatrist. He has raised a significant amount of money, actually much of which is his own money that he put into the race. So obviously money is a big factor for 2 reasons. Number one, you need money to be able to canvass and get your message out between the 5 counties, especially with not a strong amount of media, especially the further you go west.
Right.
The other thing is you need money to show that you're going to be able to viably raise money for the general election. So on the Democratic side, Grammer is going to be a viable candidate. Mayor Martinez is showing up as a viable candidate with her fundraising. And she's had a unique way of kind of going about raising her funds. She has worked with a group called Grassroots Analytics. And basically, their whole mission is to level the playing field for candidates that have a message but may not have access to donor bases. So that has helped her raise money to be able to have name recognition. At this point, though, she's burning through money pretty significantly. So the key for her is that once you've spent all this money up front to get donors to get around the country to give you $25, $10 donations, will you be able to translate that into going back to those donors and getting more money without having to pay the large fees for the consultants that you're working with to do so? But her ability to raise money, and kudos to her, the young gentleman that's just out of college running her campaign. Her money is making her viable. She's canvassing around.
She was in the $300,000-$400,000 range, right?
Yeah, she was like 313,000 or so. So she's, for each quarter, she's raised similar amounts of money. So that alone makes her viable.
Right.
But many of these candidates haven't raised any money, so it's not even worth kind of looking at them.
Well, George Gluck is interesting, if only because he appears every 4 years.
Well, George puts his name in the hat every time, but I haven't heard anything from him.
No, I haven't heard anything. He does attend some of the chamber. Again, I think surprising.
Also on the list is Joe Vogel. Joe Vogel is the young Democratic legislator out of Montgomery County. Mm-hmm. He serves in the House of Delegates. He's been able to raise a good amount of money and has a campaign and has some support out here. I know that he was recently here. He was also 10 of the candidates were at the forum on Monday, but there are some folks within our community that are prominent that have been kind of showing him around, that have shown some interest in his campaign.
So Neil Parrott is the interesting one. I mean, he was pretty close last time.
Well, that's the thing. Like, he went from, getting mollywopped by Trone to, losing by less than 10 points last time. And he did all of that without raising a lot of money. And that's the danger for Democrats in this race. If you select the wrong candidate, if he came that close running against Trone's money,
yeah,
and the fact that Trone had the advantage that he had been in the seat doing the job,
right,
that seat could be vulnerable. Now,
well, and do we think there's any notion that there's going to be an edge to Republicans this year
in this race?
In any race?
I think there can be an edge to Republicans because of a lack of enthusiasm.
Well, and what's the congressional approval rating? 17%?
It's low, but the interest in this I think the downdraft of the presidential election is going to hurt because there is a lack of interest, especially among minorities like African Americans, in this race. Nobody wants to see basically two 80-year-old men running for president. And it may have a draft down ballot where people will sit it out.
That's possible.
Right. And then you were talking about the other contenders, and the other one on the Democratic side obviously is April Delaney, right? Obviously she has the playbook from her husband. She has relationships. I know that she's setting up a campaign office in Frederick this week. Frederick is where you have to be because of how because of the primaries and how the district, how the district lays out. And that's one of the things, like when you look at Mayor Martinez's campaign, like for her to really have a dent, she's going to have people in this county show up for a primary election more so than they normally do, because the turnout from Democrats in these primary elections are normally really low. And this is the community that knows her the best. So she's going to have to create an excitement to get out some non-traditional voters.
What about Brenda Chaim?
Brenda hasn't raised any money. Now, Brenda gets around the state. I know that she, I follow her on social media, so I know that she spent some time in Allegheny County and Garrett County, so she's making it to other parts of the state where some candidates have only been out there once. I know that she was just recently there. But for me, I don't know. I don't know how you're going to get the votes if you're not showing that you can raise the money, especially on the Republican side, right? So if you're in the midst of the primary, and you're showing that you can't raise money, and you may have to go up against a Democrat that's significantly outraising you now, like what are your odds? Because I know last election cycle, I had predicted, I thought national money was going to come in for Parrott. It really didn't. But for Parrott, he's run enough and he has a name recognition, and the way the district changed with some of the more rural parts of Frederick County he didn't need that. So I think it's going to be interesting between Cox and Parrott on the Republican side. Because Cox is trying to paint Parrott as, well, you didn't stick with President Trump. You're more towards I'm thinking of somebody trying to call Cox calling Parrott a rhino is kind of funny, but.
Ooh, yeah, I don't think that'll fly. Just look at his voting record.
But Cox is trying to push that narrative, because those are going to be the two top guys on there, and I think Parrott has showed like he can run this race and not raise a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. Any other names that I think that could break through? I really don't see it. I'm looking at the Democratic side. I just think if all of these candidates stay in, then they're going to dilute. They're going to dilute some, a lot of the votes. So it's going to be interesting to see if the race consolidates, and then some of these lesser-known candidates will start to endorse others. Because it seems like some of these folks just got in the race to kind of build up their name recognition. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then on the Republican side, like the majority of these names, they aren't really raising money. And the name recognition is just not there at all. So early on, I'm going to put you on the spot. Parrott or Cox?
Parrott.
Yeah, I think Parrott has the advantage. Because of the fact is, Parrott loses a close race, and Cox got shellacked.
Yes, he did.
Right? And many felt that there was a better candidate running, then they very well could have won the mayor's seat. But that's how that plays out. Senate race.
Yes.
Senator Ben Cardin is retiring and not running again. There's 21 candidates running, including David Trone, the current congressman. And this seems to be a two-person race on the Democratic side.
Oh, it absolutely is.
You have David Trone
and
Angela Also Brooks on the Democratic side. Okay. Within the last week, we see now that Governor Hogan is running.
Yes, we do.
Now, here's the interesting thing about that. So right now, it looks like Trone is soundly winning against an Also Brooks matchup.
Yes.
Okay.
But not so much against.
Not so much with Trone. He's in a dead heat with Trone, and it's funny watching his ads, because his ads he's attacking Hogan on abortion. Like that's his attack right now in pretty much all of Trone's ads. But here's the thing. I said this the last election cycle. Trone's in trouble. This is going to be a tight race.
It absolutely is. So the Real Clear Politics has it at a dead heat,
Yes.
42-42 for Hogan versus Trone. They have Hogan beating Also Brooks, 44-37. They have Trone beating Also Brooks.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, it's going to be
Well,
interesting.
before the race even started, Trone had committed that he was going to spend $50 million on this race. He's going to have to spend every dollar of that. Now, here's the interesting needle that I feel that Trone has to thread. Before Hogan jumped in the race, it was beat Also Brooks and there's a coronation of who's going to be our next senator. Now he has to be careful how he beats Also Brooks. So if you've noticed, he has shifted. There is no talk of Also Brooks at all. It is all about Hogan. Because, especially in the heavily populated areas of PG County and Baltimore, of those that are supporting Also Brooks, there could be an enthusiasm gap if you're looking at Biden running for president and Trone running for Senate. And some people may sit out the race.
Yeah.
And if there was some there's underlying contentiousness between Trone and Also Brooks, and it's in Annapolis too. And it was explained to me that it's almost like there's gangs in Annapolis to the point of legislators are like, who you with, right? Are
Yeah.
you with Trone or are you with Also Brooks? So that's caused some friction. My point in saying that is that this is one of those situations where if the contention is built up and if Also Brooks loses the way that it looks, will her people sit out and says, I'm not voting?
Either that or they go to Hogan.
Either that or they go to Hogan, who still has a large amount of popularity in the state.
You're a financial guy.
Yes.
That's what you do for a living. You tell people about how to get the best ROI on their investments.
Yes.
Explain this one to me. David Trone is committed to spending $50 million to get a job
Yes.
that pays $174,000 a year.
Yes.
Where's the ROI?
The ROI is in the relationships. How many people have went to Congress that weren't millionaires became millionaires while they were
Most
there?
of them.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Is that not a huge problem in our political
That is
system
a huge
generally?
problem in our politics because of all the ways that he can benefit his own personal empire that he already has
Right.
in regards to affect change.
Right.
Yes, it definitely is a problem in our politics. Now,
You know, when I was in banking, there was a federal regulation that I couldn't accept a gift from a vendor that was more than $25 in value. Now, that was a while back. It may have gone up since then. But the point is, yeah, the numbers don't work. There's something else going on.
right. So that's obviously going to be the race to watch. I think that's going to be the race that we talk about more than any other race. It's just going to be fascinating to see how that goes. And, you know, Terrence talked about it all the time with Hogan's dance in regards to if he was going to run for president or not. And he kept getting close. And he gave himself a national platform because as soon as he left the governor's mansion, he's been on TV, right? Touting his message. He toyed with the no labels. And then when he walked away from that, when he said, you know what, I'm gonna flip the switch and I'm gonna run for this vulnerable seat over here. Because I'm sure there was some internal polling that was done to say Trone is vulnerable.
Oh, I'm sure he is too. If Parrott got within 10 points of him,
Exactly.
you know? I mean, seriously.
Exactly.
And yes, it's a bigger audience with the Senate seat, but Governor Hogan had a pretty big audience in Maryland.
He had a very big
And what
audience
was
in
his
Maryland.
what was his approval rate?
I don't know. It was north of what, 70%?
Yeah,
or
I
something
wanted to
like
say
that?
74, 75% when
Yeah.
he left
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
Yeah. So we're going to see if he's going to ride that wave. And you know, the other thing that's interesting too is that Governor Moore came out early and supported Also Brooks.
Yep.
Now,
Think he's regretting that now?
I don't think he's regretting it because I think he's looking more at the calculation of his shot to run for president. It's not affected by if he supports Trone or not early, because after the primary he can come back in and tout the Democratic line. But at this point, I think he's going to be stumping in Michigan touting the Biden record, trying to help the Biden campaign. So maybe he's going to be Michelle Obama's VP when they announce that she's going to be running for president.
There you go.
So we will see. Jim, the only other thing that we didn't talk about is Washington County Circuit Court Judge.
Yep.
Kurt Downey was he was recently appointed. Last week, Governor Moore came in and spoke very kind words over him at his appointments. Many of the well-known in our community were there supporting him on that. He is running unopposed in the next election, so no one was going to challenge him after the governor had just kind of stamped him, which I think it will be tough to beat him, and why waste your resources on going after that seat in this environment as well.
Let's go to a break.
All right, fair enough. And then we're going to come back with some Fast Five?
Yep.
All right, fair enough. Stay with us. We'll have Fast Five after the break. Welcome back to the show. Jim, we're going to jump into some Fast Five topics here. First topic, 5 Maryland towns people are fleeing. And just to give context, the 5 towns that people are fleeing in the state of Maryland is Baltimore, Salisbury, Cumberland. Unfortunately, we have Hagerstown and Cambridge, Maryland. And in regards to Hagerstown, a little bit of the indictment was you have a population of 40,000 with negative population growth. And the city contends with a low median income of about 41,000 and a high poverty rate of 23.8%. And includes various issues such as crime, drugs, homelessness, and blight. Facing these challenges, numerous individuals have left in spite of more robust communities. Jim, what say you?
Yeah, so first of all, this article is in something called blueandgoldnlr.com.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is too, but I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in their reporting. Number 2, yes, Hagerstown, according to them, and I'm assuming their data is correct, had a negative 0.2%, not 2%, 0.2%. I would argue that that's in the margin of error, right? That could be, that could be cyclical or whatever the case may be. Yes, we do have a low median income. There's no question about that. Yes, we do have a high poverty rate. Interestingly, what I found curious about Hagerstown, in the other jurisdictions where they were mentioning crime, they gave the crime statistics. They didn't give them for us. They said various issues such as, well, yes, guess what? Every community has crime. So I'm not willing to say that Hagerstown is the only place on the earth that has crime. Drugs, homelessness, blight, that's true at some level. But, we've got a lot of investment going on. We've got the Maryland Theater renovation. We've got the baseball stadium. We've got a lot going on downtown. We've got people like Don Bowman and others that have spent millions of dollars upgrading these buildings. And it started in the center, and hopefully with some of these other big projects, we're going to see that move out from the city core.
I'm with you.
My point is this. Yes, we have problems. We absolutely have problems. As you know, I'm not necessarily the largest fan of some of the folks that have served on that council, and right direction, wrong direction. I think we're going the right direction. I think that we've got the wrong messaging with some of it. The Cumberland thing, Cumberland is years behind us as we're years behind Frederick.
Yep.
Will they catch up? Yeah, I think they will. Especially, we talk about urban sprawl, but with this new notion of work at home,
Right.
I think you're going to find a lot more people that are going to decide, yeah, I don't want to deal with, rush hour and all this stuff. I'm going to move to Hagerstown. I'm going to move to Cumberland. I'm going to move to Oakland, Maryland, and get out of some of this. So I think the outlook, in my view, and I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but if I was a betting man, and I know from betting with you I'm not, I would bet that small towns are going to win in the next economy.
Here's what I'll say to that. Number one, looking at all of these cities, they all have the main thing in common is high poverty. And every other issue that comes into these communities stems from poverty. Because poverty is not just, a condition or monetary or lack of monetary. Poverty is a mindset that permeates through these communities. However, but Baltimore, Salisbury, Cumberland, Hagerstown, and Cambridge. I would say that Hagerstown is the most poised for recovery and a turnaround story. Because
I think so too.
right now, Hagerstown is a buy low story.
Yes, it is, for sure.
You know, and I just think that the opportunity is there because of all the investment that is coming in. The key, though, is the business community, the politicians coalescing to make this thing work and building confidence in the citizenry, right? Because, you know, so many people have a negative perception even if they don't go downtown.
Well, they have a negative perception because people post things on Facebook that are
Right.
just false.
And the first thing that is about to happen that could help stem the tide is the flying boxcars. And if they can have a successful season and people are showing up and the ballpark looks beautiful and people are enjoying the experience and coming back and rallying around the team
Well,
and
I
the new
don't.
guys.
I don't think it's just the flying box cars.
No, but
yeah,
I'm saying that's the shortest one because
I think we're already seeing that with the Maryland Theater.
well, that's been there, right? I mean, the
Yeah, but
Maryland Theater was-
notionally, they're doing a lot more with that building. I used to remember going by that sign, and it was, you know, they had
the marquee
months,
will stay the same.
Yeah, there were months where now there's something going on there all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's a topic we're going to talk about all the time, right?
Yep.
Because that's kind of the key to success for our city. The next topic is Maryland's highest courts weighs on protections for historic black cemetery.
Yeah. So my opinion on this is we've already paved over part of it. That's a problem for me. I think at some level a decision was made. I don't think it was the right decision, but we've already paid. We've got people that are buried underneath the parking lot. That's not right.
I think one of the things, just if you expand out from a state standpoint, the state has really been paying attention to all these forgotten African-American cemeteries all over the state.
That's great.
And we have them in our own community.
And halfway.
Halfway is the one that's most recognizable now because the most work is being done. Elizabeth Paul and Dr. Emily Amp and the board that they've assembled and the volunteers are doing an excellent job in regards to preserving and recognizing and digging up the history of who is buried in that cemetery. But I think many people in our community don't know that there is African-American cemeteries all over this county, many of which are grown over and have not been recognized, and we don't know many of them there. They're in Clear Spring, they're in Keedysville, they're in Roseville. They're in many different places where there's more work to be done on the cemetery front. This case is going to be interesting. Another cemetery where things were built over is right in the city of Hagerstown, in the Johnson Street community. Bethel Gardens, the housing project, was built over a cemetery. And historians looking at the records, many of them believe that most of the bodies were not removed in a humane way to Rose Hill Cemetery. Many of those feel that in that community that project was built over many of the graves there.
Wow.
So this has been a long-standing problem, and this Supreme Court case is going to be interesting. And I know that these folks had a dust-up with Congressman Trone.
Yep.
In regards to some things that they allege that he said. So this case is going to be interesting, and it may set some precedent of how things are handled around the state.
Last one, and we've got about a minute, so we're not going to get to all five, but Moore puts extra pot of cash towards green project, $90 million. I want that for Interstate 81.
Yeah, that's a presidential election move.
Whatever.
That's red meat for the base.
Okay.
So that's all we'll say about that.
Yeah.
How about that?
All right. And on that,
Yeah.
take us out.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on formerly known as Twitter, X, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But more importantly, join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.